They never said it out loud. Not really. That's how racism works in small towns like this one. It doesn't march down your street in boots and sirens. It smiles at you in church. It shakes your hand at the market, and then it disappears your son when nobody's watching. Welcome to Injustice Brown. I'm Marcus. If you believe truth matters and injustice should never be buried, make sure you subscribe. And if you feel something while listening, tell me in the comments. Let it out. Somebody needs to hear it. Gloria Mayfield had driven the same school bus route every morning for 11 years. 6 keys in hand, same hum of the engine, same gravel crunch under the tires. She knew every curve in that road, every pothole, every house with a kid who ran late. She kept peppermints in her coat pocket. The little ones knew to ask. Back then, the town of Elmswood felt frozen in time. No streetlights past the diner. No real crime outside of boys throwing rocks at the train tracks. Folks talked slow, moved slower, and didn't mind keeping things just the way they'd always been. But in the summer of 1987, things changed. Not loudly, quiet, like a snake sliding through grass. It started with a name on the radio. A 15-year-old white girl, Amanda Cole, hadn't come home from band practice. Her father was a city councilman. Her mother taught Sunday school. And when Amanda didn't walk through that front door by 8 p.m., Elmswood held its breath like it had something to hide. The search began before sunrise the next morning. Men in khakis and flashlights, helicopters circling over soybean fields, mothers locking their doors twice. And just like that, the old town rules showed their teeth. Gloria was cooking rice when she heard the knock. It wasn't frantic, wasn't loud, just firm. 2 officers. No warrant, no explanations, just, "We need to ask your son a few questions." Marcus was 17, tall for his age, played saxophone, kept to himself, never even had detention. Gloria watched them lead him off the porch like he'd already done something wrong. She asked where they were going. One of them said, "Just routine, ma'am." That was the last time she saw him as a free boy. It took less than 3 days for the town to make up its mind. They said Amanda was last seen near the gas station, where Marcus sometimes went to buy his mother's sweet tea, that he'd walked that road home from the library the same night, that he fit the description. Whatever that meant. No fingerprints, no DNA, no confession, nothing. But they had enough to make a story, and the town was starving for a villain. Gloria sat through every minute of the hearing. Not a trial, just a hearing, held in a courtroom where portraits of white judges lined the wall like ghosts. She held Marcus's hand while the prosecutor spoke about protecting our daughters and taking swift action. Nobody looked at her, not once. They sentenced her boy to 25 years. 25 years for walking home while being black in the wrong town at the wrong time. Gloria didn't cry. Not there. Not then. She just stood up, took one step back, then another, until she was 3 rows from the front. 3 rows back from where they took her son's life without pulling the trigger. 3 rows back from a judge who didn't care if the truth died right in front of him. And as they led Marcus away in cuffs, past the wooden benches, past the townspeople who whispered but never helped, Gloria whispered one thing to herself. They gone regret this. Not a scream, not a wail, just a promise, quiet, solid, heavy like iron. Because in places like Elmswood, justice doesn't break in with a bang. It rots in the walls. Until somebody rips the wood off. In Gloria Mayfield, she was just getting started. Time moved, but not for Gloria. They stacked on top of each other like bricks in a wall she couldn't climb. The world went on spinning, but hers froze in the courtroom where they took Marcus away. That moment kept replaying in her head, his eyes looking back, the sound of the cuffs, the emptiness in the hallway after. She didn't get a chance to scream, so she started writing. 1 letter, then 5, then 27. She wrote to judges, lawmakers, newspaper editors, every envelope sealed with hope, every stamp pressed down like a prayer. She made copies, kept records, even learned to talk legal, not because she wanted to, but because she had to. Most letters never came back. Some were returned unopened. And once, a local paper published a story calling her a mother in denial. Said she was making noise when she should have been making peace. But Gloria didn't stop, because Marcus didn't stop writing. Either. His letters came once a week, slanted handwriting, paper smudged with tears or sweat. He never asked her to give up. He always ended the same. Tell Ruthie I love her. Tell her I didn't do it. Ruthie was barely 2 when they took her father. She used to hold his letters to her chest like they were treasure, but as she grew older, she started asking questions Gloria couldn't answer. Why didn't they let him come home? Why didn't anybody fix it? Gloria just said, some people don't see us as worth fixing things for. She was raising a child while burying a husband. Her husband, Walter, couldn't take the weight. He stopped talking much after Marcus went in, started drinking, lost his job. His blood pressure climbed until his heart gave out. They called it natural causes. Gloria called it what it was, grief that had nowhere to go. She worked 2 jobs after that, drove the school bus in the morning, cleaned offices at night. In between, she wrote more letters. The corners of her kitchen table stayed stacked with paper, pens, highlighters, envelopes. Her hands stayed tired, her eyes stayed red, but her mind never quiet. The world outside didn't care. She'd see folks in town laugh, shop, gossip, like nothing happened, like they hadn't watched Marcus be sentenced without proof. People who once hugged her in church now crossed the street. They acted like Marcus was a memory that needed to be erased. And somehow, through all of it, the sheriff still smiled. Sheriff Bridger got a promotion 3 years after the case, said, to be firm but fair, kept order in the community, shook hands at parades, posed with the mayor in front of flags. But every time Gloria saw him, she saw the man who let it happen, the man who watched a boy get caged so a town could feel safe. One day, about 7 years in, a letter finally came back. It was from a lawyer's office in Birmingham. Gloria's hand shook as she opened it. She thought for a second that maybe this was it. Maybe someone had listened. Maybe Marcus could come home. But the letter didn't say that. It said, we appreciate your concern. However, no new evidence has been presented. Please refrain from further contact. That was it. A cold wall dressed in legal language. A polite way of saying, stop trying. We don't care. She sat at the table for hours after reading it. Didn't move. The air felt thick, like something sacred had finally cracked. For a long time, Gloria wondered if she was crazy, if maybe she dreamed up a different version of her son, or if she was wrong for fighting a battle nobody wanted to watch. But then she'd see Ruthie. She'd see Marcus's eyes in her, his stubborn chin, his quiet laugh, and she knew the truth didn't go away just because the world decided it was inconvenient. She kept writing, but not to them. She started writing to Marcus again. Long letters, not because he needed them, but because she did. And she told him everything about Ruthie's school, about how the stars looked at night, about how the trees still leaned a little to the left on the road to church, about how she hadn't forgotten. She never forgot, because the system wasn't broken. It was built that way, built to ignore the Glorias, built to silence the Marcuses, built to let Sheriff Bridger sleep well at night while mothers buried their boys in silence. But Gloria Mayfield didn't stay silent, not in the courtroom, not at her husband's funeral, not at the mailbox, not in the face of every cold letter that tried to end her fight. And even if no one was listening, she'd keep talking. Because truth isn't just what happened, it's what refuses to die. There's a kind of evil that doesn't need to shout. It walks slow, tips its hat, winks when it wins, and in Elmswood, that evil wore a badge and a buttoned-up uniform with polished boots and a grin that made your skin itch. Sheriff Cole Bridger had been in power longer than some folks had been alive. He wasn't loud. He didn't need to be. His name held weight like something you didn't want to drop in public. People said it soft, like it might hear them. The sheriff. That's all they had to say. Everybody knew who they meant. Gloria had always felt it. He smiled too easy when black boys got put in cuffs, like it gave him peace, like he was fixing something broken just by locking them away. He'd stand in the back of the church on Easter Sunday, hand on the Bible, nodding along to the preacher's words about grace, and then come Monday, he'd drag another teenager down to the station over a wallet found blocks away. Folks didn't question it, not out loud, because the ones who did ended up jobless, homeless, or just disappeared from town like smoke in the wind. But Gloria noticed the pattern. She'd seen it before, and she saw it again one August morning, 12 years after Marcus's sentencing. Another boy, 17, Jamal Lewis, straight a student, played varsity football, picked up outside the grocery store, accused of aggressive behavior because he looked at a white girl and didn't look away fast enough. That's all it took. No weapon, no threat, just a glance. It felt familiar. Gloria Sat on her porch with Jamal's mama the next day. To women, to folding chairs, to stories that were starting to sound the same. The way they came. The way they said it's just procedure. The way the town swallowed it whole, without a second thought. Gloria's hands shook with rage, but her voice didn't. They do this, she said, because they know we'll get tired. But she wasn't tired. Not anymore. She was burning. So she walked right into the sheriff's office that Friday. No appointment. No warning. Just a mother with nothing left to lose. Bridger was sitting behind his desk, boots on the edge, cup of coffee in hand like he hadn't ruined half a dozen lives and slept just fine. Gloria, he said, that same smooth tone he used at church. Potlucks. To what do I owe the pleasure? She didn't sit down. Didn't blink. You know Marcus didn't do it, she said. You knew back then, and you know it now. And you're doing it again. He smiled. That slow, slithering smile. Careful now, he said. Making accusations like that could be dangerous. Her stomach turned. Not from fear, from the way he said it. Like he wasn't warning her. He was reminding her who owned this town. Gloria, step closer. I ain't scared of you, she said. You've already taken everything you could. I got nothing left but the truth, and it don't die just 'cause you hide it behind a badge. For a second, his eyes changed. Not rage, not shame, just annoyance like someone had left a window open on a cold day. You keep pushing, he said, and I'll have reason to look into you next. And that was it. No shouting, no gun on the table, just quiet menace in a quiet room, in a quiet town that had learned to keep its evil polite. Gloria walked out of that office with one thing she didn't have when she walked in. Proof. Not on paper, not in fingerprints, but in the way he looked at her. The way he grinned like a man who believed he'd never be held accountable. That's when she knew. This wasn't just about Marcus. It never had been. This was about all of them. Jamal, Marcus, the ones before, the ones who never got a trial, the ones who never made the paper, and the ones who would be next if nobody said anything. The sheriff didn't just smile when black boys got locked up. He built the lock himself. She didn't look like much at first. Beige car, coffee-stained notebook, hair tied up like she'd been driving all day. Just another stranger passing through town, probably lost or looking for directions. Her name was Elaine Bishop. A reporter from somewhere up north said she was working on a story about wrongful convictions in small-town courts. Said she heard something about Elmswood. Said she was just looking for truth. Gloria almost laughed in her face. She'd heard all kinds of people claim they cared. Some came with clipboards, some with sympathy in their eyes. Most left without ever asking a second question, and not a single one stayed long enough to mean it. So when Elaine knocked on her door and asked if she could talk about Marcus, Gloria crossed her arms and said, "Why now? He'd been in that cell for over 20 years. Where were you then?" Elaine didn't answer right away. She just said, "I'm late, but I'm here." Gloria didn't trust her, but something about her, something quiet and persistent, made her pause. That night, she pulled out the box, a cardboard showbox, worn at the edges, full of every letter Marcus ever sent, every newspaper clipping, every denial from every lawyer, court, or state office that refused to listen. She set it on the table and slid it toward Elaine like a test. "If you're serious," she said, "read them all, and don't talk to me till you do." Elaine nodded. And she stayed for hours. She read every line, every heartbreak, every memory. She sat in that quiet living room while the world outside kept turning, and Gloria watched her, studying the way her eyes shifted when she hit certain words, the way her hands trembled when she read the letter Marcus wrote the night Walter died. Gloria didn't say much, just watched, measured. And for the first time in decades, someone was listening and not trying to fix her grief with soft words or empty pity. A few days later, Elaine came back with a folder. Inside were 3 cases, 3 boys, all arrested, within 6 years of each other, all under Sheriff Bridger, all black, all young, all sentenced fast. One of them had already died in prison. The others, nobody knew. It wasn't a pattern. It was a blueprint. Gloria felt her knees weaken, but she didn't fall. She looked at Elaine and asked, "What now?" Elaine said, "Now we dig." Quietly, they started meeting every other evening, in back rooms, at Gloria's kitchen table, sometimes at the library after closing. Elaine brought records, case files, police logs. Gloria brought memories, names, faces, The town's buried whispers. They moved like ghosts, careful not to be seen together too often. Elmswood didn't need much of a reason to turn cold. And if word got out that Gloria Mayfield and a white journalist were poking around old scars, it wouldn't just be doors closing, it might be worse. But piece by piece, the story began to form. Court transcripts that didn't match their arrest reports, witnesses who were never called, evidence that mysteriously disappeared, and every path led back to the same man in the same office, with the same polished boots and the same slow smile. Sheriff Bridger hadn't just been wrong, he'd been deliberate. Elaine didn't pretend to understand everything Gloria had lost, but she didn't flinch from it either, and that mattered. She asked hard questions. She stayed up late. She didn't disappear. And one night, after hours of sorting through a stack of photocopied court documents, Gloria finally said it out loud. "You might be the first white person who looked me in the eye and didn't think I was making it all up." Elaine looked back and said, "You don't have to trust me. Just trust the truth. It's louder than both of us." That was the night Gloria knew she wasn't alone anymore. Not in her grief, not in her fight, not in this heavy, hollow town that pretended its sins were buried deep enough to forget. Hope didn't feel like fireworks or trumpets. It felt like a pen scratching paper at midnight. It felt like a box of letters being read, finally, like a voice speaking that had been ignored a long dot, and for the first time since Marcus was taken, Gloria felt something crack open in her chest. Not joy, not yet, but possibility. The truth didn't come like thunder. It came in a folder. Elaine showed up that morning with her hair still wet from the motel shower and a look in her eyes that made Gloria's breath catch. She didn't sit down, just opened the folder, laid it on the table, and whispered. Her name was never Amanda Cole. Not anymore. Gloria stared down at the photo. It was grainy, but the eyes were the same, older now, different haircut, different state, but it was her. The girl Marcus was accused of killing had never died. Amanda had run away. She'd been found alive less than a year after the trial, picked up by police in Tennessee under a different name. She told them everything, that she left town to escape what was happening at home, that she didn't want to go back, that she wasn't missing, she was hiding. But they didn't take her home. They took her statement. Then they buried it, because bringing her back meant questions. Questions about her family, about her father, the same city councilman who sat in that courtroom pretending to grieve. Questions about what she was running from and who had known and who had helped cover it. So instead, they covered Marcus. The town needed a story, and Marcus was convenient. A clean, quiet boy with no one to defend him except a black mother with no power and no platform. Sheriff Bridger knew. Elaine found the internal memo dated 6 months after the trial, signed by him. A quiet directive. No further inquiry necessary. Gloria didn't cry. She didn't shout. She sat at her kitchen table, fists clenched, shaking, trying to breathe. Through 23 years of rage clawing its way out of her throat. "My boy," she whispered. "He sat in a cage for nothing." Elaine nodded. "No," Gloria said. "Not for nothing. For them. For their secrets. For their reputation. For that damn sheriff's career." And the town? It still didn't want to hear it. When they tried to file a petition for review, the courthouse stalled them. Files went missing. Phone calls dropped. Even Elaine's editor got cold feet. Sheriff Bridger paid Gloria a visit that same week. This time, he didn't smile. "You need to stop," he said. "People get hurt when old dirt gets stirred up." But Gloria didn't flinch. She looked him in the eye and said, "Then I'll bury you in it." Because now they had the truth. Not a theory, not a hunch, pages, statements, names, a living woman with a story to tell. In a system that couldn't cover it up forever, the lie had lasted 23 years. But the truth? It had a longer memory. Marcus walked out of prison on a cool morning, 30 years late, but still breathing. The gates opened, and the world outside felt both foreign and familiar. Gloria was there, eyes swollen but fierce, holding his hands like she'd never let go again. The town pretended to fix what it broke. They held a press conference, promises made in polished speeches and empty smiles. They called it restorative justice, but nobody said sorry. Not really. Not to Gloria. Not to Marcus. Not to the family that had been waiting for decades. In a silence louder than any shout, Sheriff Bridger retired with honors. The town gave him a parade like a hero, shaking his hand, patting his back, like the truth was just a rumor. Like justice was a box you could close and shove in a closet. But Elaine Bishop's story didn't stay buried. She published every letter, every memo, every hidden file. The full truth poured out like a flood. The story went viral. Screens lit up across the country. Faces contorted with shock, disbelief, rage. People who'd never heard of Elmswood now knew its name and the lie it lived. Ruthie, Marcus's daughter, stood tall at graduation. She wore a sharp black robe and a new name, Civil Rights Attorney. Her voice, steady and clear, carried the weight of her mother's fight and grandfather's grief. She spoke of resilience, of justice not as an event, but a lifelong battle. Gloria stood in that same courtroom where Marcus had been sentenced, her heart heavy, but her spirit unbroken. She looked out at the faces of strangers, of people who had no choice but to hear this time. She spoke softly at first, then with the strength of every mother who had to swallow her screams. "We waited," she said. "We waited for truth when it was hidden. We waited for justice when it was denied. We waited for a moment when someone would say, 'Enough.'" She paused, letting those words hang. This is that moment. The courtroom didn't feel like a prison anymore. It felt like a beginning. Not clean, not perfect, but real. Marcus didn't just get his freedom back. He reclaimed his story. The story stolen by lies, by silence, by fear. And Gloria, she didn't stop. Because she knew the fight was bigger than one boy, one family, one town. It was for every mother holding her breath, every child waiting for a chance, every person who dared to believe justice was more than a word. Pain had planted seeds in that hard soil. Seeds of truth, resilience, and the slow, steady rise of hope. And no matter how long it took, they were still growing.